If you watch the coverage this year, you would think the clue is in the word royal rather than the word variety. We get a full palace glamour at the Royal Albert Hall. Velvet on the royals, velvet on the seats, velvet everywhere except perhaps on Jason Manford's jokes. Kate back from cancer looking magnificent. William is in velvet too. Paddington sings. Jessie J emotes. Stephen Fry is out of his traitor's robes. 400 people belt out Les Mis in front of an LED backdrop big enough to power a small airport. And yet, for all the charm of the occasion and the genuinely moving subplot of the two women, Kate and Jessie J, quietly comparing scars and survival, I cannot shake the feeling that the Royal Variety performance is itself living a sort of half-life, trapped between concert and television show, between charity gala and overproduced Christmas trailer. The culprit is partly the venue, partly the screens, and the Royal Albert Hall is a glorious building. It's also a barn. It was designed for oratorios and massed bands, not the tight turns and patter of Variety. Variety at its best is intimate. It needs the crackle you get when a comic can see the whites of the eyes in the cheap seats and hear the groan when a gag dies. Instead, we now get a slightly reverential hush of a big arena, the royal box lit like a reliquary, and the whole thing mediated through gigantic projections. The acts are framed less like live performances and more like a trailer for their West End residency or their new single. Contrast that with the 1912 of the Palace Theatre in Cambridge Circus. 3 million roses draped around the auditorium, the King and Queen squeezed into a proper West End house, and a bill full of music hall oddities whose names alone sound more fun than half the auto-cued links on ITV. Little Titch, Wilkie Bard, Mary Lloyd scandalously left off because she's too risque. In itself, a reminder that Variety relied on a live, slightly dangerous relationship with its audience. Vesta Tilley strides on in trousers. Queen Mary ostentatiously lifts her programme to her face in horror, and the audience cools. That is real-time social commentary in a theatre, not a carefully pre-cleared cutaway to a royal chuckling at the correct moment. What we have now feels closer to a Christmas multi-show reel than to that anarchic, slightly sweaty mix of acts that made the thing famous. At the Royal Albert Hall, the evening is dominated by long set pieces, a big segment from Paddington the musical, a chunk of Kinky Boots, Les Mis, the Les Mis mega medley, all swaddled in digital scenery. Impressive, yes, but Variety as a form was invented precisely so you did not sit through half an act from a musical you could book tickets for anyway. You had the musical star in front of a cloth, a couple of choruses, then off, followed by a juggler novelty act, comic, soprano, magician, quick change artist. The pleasure lay in the constant gear changes. Of course, there were acts of opera in some instances, which I suppose would and there were ballets as well. Screens flatten that. Instead of a succession of different worlds, we get one house style, great slabs of LED, animated arches, sweeping camera shots designed for the television audience at home, with the hall itself functioning as a wallpaper. The production grammar is now closer to the X Factor final than to Sunday night at the London Palladium. The back wall does an awful lot of work that used to be done by the performers, and all those seats behind the stage. This matters because the Royal Variety is not just a fundraiser, it's a sort of annual state of the nation about popular performance, and we should never underestimate the value of the popular, the value of the ephemeral. In 1963, John Lennon could stand in front of the Royal Box and say, "Those in the cheaper seats, clap your hands, the rest of you just rattle your jewellery," and it worked because the theatre preserved that class geography and physical form. Now the cameras cut decorously between boxes and stalls, and any real social edge is carefully sanded away between ad breaks. The irony is that the royal presence this year is genuinely human and rather touching. Kate talking to the twins from Brinsworth House, confiding that her kiddies were furious to miss Paddington. then going backstage to hug Jessie J as one cancer survivor to another. That feels closer to the original spirit of the event than some of the stagecraft does. The Royal Variety Charity was set up to look after performers when the lights had dimmed and the bookings stopped. It still funds Brinsworth House and now sensibly a mental health initiative for people in the industry. In that respect, the Albert Hall scale helps. 150 million television viewers, serious money raised, a global shop window for British theatre and music. But the form has drifted away from its roots in the West End theatres that made those performances in the first place. The Palace, the Colosseum, the Palladium, these were working houses. On a Monday night, you might have the King in the box too. On Tuesday afternoon, a matinee full of office girls and dockers. That porousness between command performance and ordinary tickets is a large part of why the show mattered. Putting it in the Albert Hall every year now makes it feel more like an occasional state spectacle than part of the living ecology of London theatre. So yes, of course, I'm pleased that the Princess is well enough to sit in the box again, and I'm delighted that Paddington continues his late career renaissance as the safest possible symbol of British niceness, but I find myself longing for less projection and more proximity, fewer LED vistas, more footlights. Give me back a proper theatre, a proscenium arch, an orchestra pit in a pit, rather than hung on trusses, and performers who have to fill a space with their craft, not with digital wallpaper. If the Royal Variety really wanted to honour its own history, it might occasionally decamp from the Albert Hall and return to its natural habitat, a slightly scruffy West End theatre, rammed to the rafters, with the smell of the crowd and the sense that at any moment something unscripted could happen. The Royal Box would be closer to the stage, the jokes a shade sharper, the politics a little harder to ignore. Variety's always been the art of doing a lot with very little. At the moment, we have rather a lot of very little happening on very big screens. So this is my heretical suggestion. Keep the charity, keep the royals if you must, keep Paddington and the marmalade sandwiches, but for the sake of the art form, retire from the Royal Albert Hall as the default home and put the show back into a theatre with brick walls, cramped dressing rooms, and a gods that can actually boo. Let the Royal Variety performance be once more what it was in 1912, a night when the music hall came into its kingdom, rather than a night when the projections did.